I want you to take a second and just actually feel the device you were using to listen to this right now.
Yeah, you probably don't even need to look at it, right?
Exactly, because its presence is essentially baked into your nervous system at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, you can literally feel that phantom vibration in your pocket.
Oh, that is the worst feeling.
It is. And you can just sense the endless ping of notifications, that ever-growing red bubble in your inbox.
The 3 different group chats that just demand your immediate reaction.
Right? It is this deafening, relentless clatter of our modern existence.
Mhm.
It's the 24/7 news cycle screaming at you from every screen in the airport, the car horns, the sirens.
Just the sheer weight of being constantly, inescapably connected.
Yeah, we are living in a society that is quite literally drowning in noise.
It really is an absolute sensory and cognitive overload. And, well, what is so insidious about it is that we've convinced ourselves this is just the cost of doing business.
Like it's just normal.
Exactly. We think, like, well, if I just multitask a little more efficiently, if I can just consume information slightly faster.
Listen to everything on 2 times speed.
Right. We think we'll finally get to the bottom of the inbox, but of course, the water just keeps rising.
It never stops.
No, it doesn't. And the allostatic load, the wear and tear on your body from that chronic stress, it just continues to compound.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because usually when we talk about escaping this trap, the solution pitched to us is always some sort of retreat, right?
Oh, sure. Go live on a mountain.
Right. The advice is to do a 10-day silent retreat, delete all your apps, just completely abandon society.
But if you look at history, you realize this isn't a uniquely modern problem.
No, not at all. And the solution isn't running away.
No.
So let's travel back for a second to the late 1st century AD.
Okay. Taking it back.
Yeah, we're in Rome, and I want you to imagine Lucius Annaeus Seneca. He is Rome's greatest living playwright, its wisest philosopher, its most influential power broker.
A very busy guy.
Incredibly busy. And he is desperately trying to get some work done. But he happens to be living directly above a bustling Roman bathhouse.
Which is just the absolute definition of a hostile work environment.
I can't even imagine.
Well, you have to remember, a Roman bathhouse is not some serene modern-day spa with, like, pan flute music in the background.
Right, no cucumber water.
Exactly. It is a gymnasium, a social club, a tavern, and a public square all rolled into one massive building.
Is it loud?
It is incredibly loud. You have athletes grunting and dropping massive stone weights on the floor directly below his desk.
Wow.
You have a masseuse pummeling the backs of clients. Swimmers are splashing and shouting in the pools.
And he's just trying to write.
Right. And then out on the street, vendors are screaming their wares. Iron-wheeled carriages are violently rumbling over the cobblestones.
Just chaos.
Absolute chaos.
Oh.
At one point, Seneca actually notes that a pickpocket is being arrested right at the entrance, making a massive scene.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, dogs are barking, carpenters are hammering. It is unmitigated bedlam.
Bedlam? And, I mean, that's just the external noise. You look at Seneca's internal world, it is a mess, too.
Oh, a total mess.
His finances are constantly being threatened by overseas unrest. He's aging, feeling his mortality. He has political enemies circling him like sharks.
And most terrifyingly, he's working as an advisor to the Emperor Nero.
Who is completely deranged.
Yeah, deeply unstable. Seneca could literally have his head separated from his shoulders on a momentary whim.
And yet, amidst all that hammering, the shouting, the fear, and just the intense political pressure, he sits at his desk.
And he writes?
He writes these brilliant, perfectly crafted, crystal clear essays that have survived for 2 millennia.
And that is the absolute crux of the matter. Like, how does a human biological system function at that level of genius in that kind of environment?
It seems impossible.
It does. But Seneca actually wrote a letter to a friend about this exact situation.
Oh, what did he say?
He said, and I quote, "I force my mind to concentrate and keep it from straying to things outside itself. All outdoors may be bedlam, provided that there's no disturbance within."
Provided that there is no disturbance within.
Yeah.
That is such a powerful thesis, and really sets the core mission of this deep dive today.
It absolutely does.
Because we are exploring the concept of stillness, drawing heavily on the brilliant synthesis of ancient wisdom in Ryan Holiday's book, Stillness is the Key.
Right.
But I want to be incredibly clear right out of the gate here. We are not talking about soft, New Age passivity.
Definitely not.
We are not talking about checking out or surrendering or, being a pushover.
Right. This is a profound masterclass in using stillness as the ultimate weapon.
The ultimate weapon. I love that.
It is. It is the prerequisite for peak performance, for absolute emotional control, and for unbreakable spiritual peace.
No matter how loud the bathhouse below you gets.
Precisely. Stillness is what aims the sniper's rifle. It is the cognitive slowing down that allows the professional baseball player to track a 100-mile-per-hour fastball and actually hit it.
Wow, yeah.
It is what allows leaders to resist the frenzied passions of the mob. It is a highly active, dynamic state of being.
Active, not passive.
Exactly. And to truly understand how to harness it, we have to recognize that it doesn't just happen to you by accident. It has to be ruthlessly cultivated.
Which is why we're going to deconstruct this weapon across 3 timeless domains today.
Okay, let's lay it out.
First, we have to look at the mind. So, how to filter the noise and achieve clarity over chaos.
The foundation.
Right. But a clear mind is useless if your soul is rotting, so then we'll move to the spirit.
How to heal the heart.
Exactly. Heal the heart, master your emotional reactions, and tame that inner tiger.
And finally,
because we are physical creatures, we'll explore the body. How this philosophy actually manifests in the physical world through routine, boundaries, and deliberate action.
we are going to build a fortress, brick by brick.
Brick by brick.
And as we embark on this, I want to pose a question directly to you, the listener.
Okay.
What stands out to you when you try to sit quietly in a room alone?
Ooh, that's a tough one.
It is. The philosopher Blaise Pascal famously observed back in 1654 that all of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone.
That is so true, though.
Think about the last time your phone died and you had nothing to look at. When you try to just sit there, what rushes in?
Yeah, what fills that space?
Is it an overwhelming anxiety? Is it an obsessive to-do list? Is it a painful memory?
Right.
Understanding the specific nature of the noise that breaks your stillness is the very first step to mastering it.
I think for most people, what rushes in is sheer panic.
Total panic.
And to really grasp what mental stillness looks like when that panic is dialed up to the absolute maximum, we have to look at a moment when the stakes weren't just, a missed email.
Right, something much bigger.
We're talking about the literal survival of the human race. I want to talk about October 1962.
Ah, the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Yeah. We are talking about arguably the most dangerous 13 days in human history.
Without a doubt.
I was reading the background on this, and the timeline is just terrifying. John F. Kennedy goes to bed on October 15th.
Okay.
While he's sleeping, the CIA analyzes spy plane photos and identifies that the Soviet Union is actively constructing ballistic nuclear missile sites in Cuba.
Just 90 miles off the coast of Florida.
Exactly. Kennedy wakes up, and his briefing essentially says, Mr. President, these missiles are capable of striking Washington, D.C., the Panama Canal, Mexico City.
Basically an entire hemisphere.
Right. And if they launch, the estimates are that 70 million people will die in the initial strikes.
70 million people.
I cannot even fathom the physiological shock that would induce in a human body first thing in the morning.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, you have to remember the intense political and psychological context Kennedy was operating within at that time.
Right. He wasn't exactly having an easy presidency.
Not at all. He was a very young president. His first year and a half in office had been incredibly rocky.
Marked by the catastrophic failure of the Bay of Pigs invasion.
Exactly. And on top of that, he had been completely dominated diplomatically by the Soviet premier, Nikita Khrushchev, at their summit in Vienna.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, Khrushchev looked across the table at Kennedy and saw weakness. He saw a young, inexperienced, physically frail leader who could be bullied and pushed into a corner.
So the pressure on Kennedy to prove he isn't weak is just unfathomable.
Immense.
And immediately, his generals, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, his closest advisors, they are absolutely screaming for kinetic action.
They want to fight.
They are entirely emphatic. They sit in the Oval Office and tell him, we must destroy these missile sites immediately with the full might of the American military arsenal.
They wanted to bomb them into oblivion.
Yes, and then they wanted to launch a full-scale D-Day-style invasion of Cuba.
Their logic is entirely primal, right? Aggression must be met with overwhelming aggression.
It is the classic reactive mindset, tit for tat.
The amygdala takes over completely, bypassing the prefrontal cortex entirely.
And here is the terrifying reality.
Yeah.
If those generals were wrong,
Yeah.
if an American invasion triggered a local Soviet commander in Cuba to launch a tactical nuclear weapon in self-defense.
The chain reaction begins.
The world literally ends. There was no one left to write the history books about who made a slight miscalculation in the Situation Room.
But instead of reacting, instead of letting the panic and the massive, fragile egos of the men in that room dictate the terms, Kennedy does something incredible.
He slows everything down.
He had recently read Barbara Tuchman's book, The Guns of August.
Oh, about World War I, right.
Yes, which details how overconfident, reactive leaders blundered their way into the absolute meat grinder of World War I simply because they couldn't stop the momentum of conflict once the gears started turning.
Once that train leaves the station.
Exactly. Kennedy refused to let that happen.
What's amazing is how he physically managed himself in that room.
What's fascinating here is how Kennedy deliberately weaponized time. While surrounded by screaming generals, he engaged in a kind of active cognitive meditation right there in the room.
Wait, really? Like right in the middle of the meetings?
Yes. We actually have his handwritten notes from these XCOM meetings. He's doodling sailboats, deliberately focusing his mind on calming images of the ocean.
That is wild.
He's writing words repetitively on his yellow legal pads, almost like a grounding mantra. Missile, missile, missile.
Just writing it out.
Or he writes veto, veto, veto. And perhaps most tellingly, consensus, consensus, consensus. He is literally, physically writing his way out of a panic response and into a state of cognitive stillness.
Okay, I have to push back here, though.
Go ahead.
In a crisis where every single minute counts, isn't slowing down the absolute worst thing you can do?
It feels like it, right?
I mean, my instinct says that feels like standing still on the train tracks. If a freight train is bearing down on you, you jump. You don't sit down on the rails and draw a picture of a sailboat to ground yourself.
It's a completely counterintuitive concept, especially in Western culture where we idolize decisive, rapid-fire action.
Yeah, we love the myth of the CEO who makes million-dollar decisions in 3 seconds.
We do. But stillness is not paralysis. It is not freezing on the tracks like a deer in the headlights.
Okay, so what is it then?
To understand what Kennedy was doing, you have to look at the Eastern philosophical concept of wu-wei, which translates roughly to non-action, or more accurately, disciplined action.
Disciplined action.
It's the profound ability to hold back, to let the muddy waters settle, to wait for the absolute perfect pitch rather than swinging wildly at the first thing thrown your way.
Ah, I see.
Kennedy's stillness was a highly calibrated strategy. By opting for a naval blockade, which he brilliantly rebranded as a quarantine to sound less like an act of war, he created space.
He didn't back Khrushchev into a corner where the only way out was to push the button.
Exactly. He gave his opponent time to breathe, to reevaluate, to save face, and to slowly realize that Kennedy wasn't a weak kid after all.
That makes total sense. It reminds me of that beautiful quote from the Stoic Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius.
Oh, the wave quote.
Yes, he said you have to be like the rock that the waves keep crashing over. It stands unmoved, and the raging of the sea falls still around it.
Beautiful.
The generals in that room were the waves. The Soviet submarines creeping toward the quarantine line were the waves.
The threat of nuclear holocaust was the biggest, most terrifying wave in human history.
And Kennedy just stood there.
Yeah.
I read he even physically removed himself from the room sometimes, so his advisors could debate the logistics without his ego or his presence stifling their logic.
Yes, he went and swam in the White House pool to regulate his nervous system.
He sought solitude in the rose garden.
He was the stillest guy in the room. And because he had stilled the muddy waters of his own mind, the sediment dropped, and he could finally see the chessboard with absolute clarity.
He could see the real motivations.
Exactly. He understood intuitively that Khrushchev only put the missiles in Cuba because he was terrified of American missiles in Turkey.
He saw the fear driving his enemy.
And with that clear thinking, patience, and profound empathy for his opponent's position, Kennedy navigated the needle and saved the world.
It is the ultimate testament to the power of the pause.
Truly.
But here's the catch for the rest of us. To get to that level of clarity, you can't just flip a switch when the crisis hits.
No, definitely not.
You can't live a chaotic, reactive life for 30 years and then suddenly become Marcus Aurelius when the pressure is on.
You have to train for it.
You have to train for it, and a huge part of that training is controlling what you allow to enter your mind in the first place.
Which brings us to the crucial idea of limiting our inputs.
Exactly. We live under this collective delusion that more information automatically equals better decision-making.
We really do. We think if we just read one more article, scroll one more thread, we'll crack the code.
But the economist Herbert Simon brilliantly stated, A wealth of information creates a poverty of attention.
The human brain has a finite bandwidth. If you want to think clearly and achieve stillness, you have to ruthlessly filter out the inconsequential.
Look at Napoleon. As a military general and an emperor, he was dealing with armies marching across Europe, endless logistical nightmares, political maneuvering,
Massive amounts of incoming data.
huge amounts. And his solution, he instructed his secretary to delay opening his mail for 3 weeks.
3 weeks.
3 weeks. And when they finally opened the letters, Napoleon would laugh at how many supposedly urgent, world-ending crises had just completely resolved themselves without his intervention.
It's a brilliant, if extreme, strategy. Compare that to how we operate today with the CNN effect.
Yeah, explain that.
That's a term political scientists use to describe how breathless 247 media coverage forces leaders to be entirely reactive.
Because everyone is watching.
Right. When you are watching the news in real time, every trivial detail is magnified into a catastrophe. The amygdala is constantly firing. The mind becomes overwhelmed by analysis paralysis.
Dwight D. Eisenhower understood this deeply.
He did. When he was president, he strictly enforced a chain of command for information. No one was allowed to just pop into his office and hand him unopened mail or dump half-explored, panicked problems on his desk.
He used what we now call the Eisenhower box to matrix information by urgency and importance.
He protected his internal stillness by guarding his external doors.
Okay, so how do we actually apply this? Because I'll be honest, if I ignore my boss's Slack messages for 3 weeks like Napoleon, I'm not going to find out the problems resolve themselves.
No, definitely.
I'm going to find out I'm unemployed. So how does a normal person guard their doors without ruining their life?
It's about intentionality, not negligence.
Okay.
The Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh talks about examining our diet, and he doesn't mean food.
Right.
He means our consumption of information, entertainment, and conversation. If we consume toxic, panic-inducing news all day, if we allow our phones to interrupt our deep work every 4 minutes with a push notification about a celebrity scandal, we are actively feeding our minds garbage.
And it's the old computing adage, garbage in, garbage out.
Exactly. If you want high-quality output, you must fiercely guard the inputs. You have to utilize the do not disturb function. You have to check your email in batches rather than leaving it open all day.
Marcus Aurelius told himself to ask at every single moment, is this necessary?
And most of what we consume is entirely unnecessary.
So what does this all mean? I like to think of your mind as a highly exclusive nightclub.
I love this analogy.
Right now, for most of us, there is no bouncer. The doors are wide open. We let in the 24/7 news cycle, the Twitter trolls, the passive-aggressive email from a colleague, the existential dread about the economy.
And they completely trash the place.
They do. People are fighting, it's loud, it's chaotic. Filtering your inputs means putting a massive, ruthless bouncer at the door.
Yeah.
You look at a breaking news alert, and the bouncer says, is this actionable? Does this change how I live my life today? No. You're not on the list, go away.
That is a highly accurate analogy, because if you let the club get trashed, the cognitive load is too heavy.
Okay.
But here's the next step. Even when you have the bouncer in place, even when the club is secure from the outside, you sometimes have to clear the dance floor completely just to hear the music.
Oh, interesting.
You have to actively empty the mind of your own internal calculations.
This is where it gets into the concept of flow. Let's look at the baseball player Shawn Green.
Great example.
In 2002, he was playing for the Dodgers and going through the absolute worst hitting slump of his career. He was highly paid, the media critics were screaming at him, and he was hyper-fixated on his swing mechanics.
Overthinking everything.
He was entirely trapped in his own head.
And we normally assume that thinking is a good thing, right? Expertise requires thought.
Usually.
But as D.T. Suzuki, a great popularizer of Zen Buddhism, noted, our greatest works are done when we are not calculating and thinking.
Neuroscience actually backs this up.
It does. It's a state called transient hypofrontality, where the analytical part of the brain temporarily powers down, allowing the motor cortex and implicit memory to take over completely. Green didn't consult a swing coach to analyze the physics of his bat. He leaned into Zen Buddhism. He practiced clearing his mind entirely when he stepped into the batter's box. He sought total emptiness.
And the results were staggering. He hit 4 home runs in a single game, setting a massive record.
Incredible.
It perfectly echoes the teachings of the legendary archery master Owa Kenzo. Kenzo wouldn't even teach his students how to aim at the target.
He taught them to detach completely from the outcome.
Right. He told them their biggest problem was that they had too much willful will. They were so obsessed with the idea of hitting the bullseye that their muscles tensed, their minds clouded, and they missed.
Kenzo wanted them to drop the willful will, to shoot without calculating, to achieve a state of emptiness where the arrow almost shoots itself.
The Tao Te Ching has a beautiful paradox about this exact concept.
Oh, the pitcher analogy.
Yes, it points out that a pitcher is made of clay, but it is the emptiness inside the clay that actually holds the water and makes it useful. A room is made of 4 physical walls, but it is the empty space in the middle where we actually live our lives.
By relying on what is not there, by emptying the mind of calculation, ego, and outcome dependency, we create something incredibly powerful.
So how do we clear that dance floor? How do we sweep the mind clean when it's cluttered with our own anxieties?
One of the most effective, time-tested tools throughout human history has been journaling.
It is truly remarkable how universal the practice of journaling is among the great minds of history.
It really is. You have Seneca, the Stoic we mentioned earlier with the bathhouse.
Right, the guy above the gym.
Every single night after his wife went to sleep, he would sit down in the quiet and examine his entire day.
He would ask himself what he did wrong, what he did right, what passions he let run away with him.
He hid nothing from himself, and he noted that the sleep that followed this rigorous self-examination was incredibly sweet and deep.
And then you see the exact same practice in someone in a vastly different, far more tragic circumstance. Anne Frank, a 13-year-old girl hiding in an attic from the Nazis. She used her diary to process her immense fears, to separate her higher, rational self from the sheer chaos and terror around her.
She wrote, "I can't build my hopes on a foundation of confusion, misery, and death."
Her diary was her stronghold. It was how she maintained her humanity.
It proves that you don't need to be a philosopher or an emperor to benefit from this. The point of a journal isn't to write a bestseller. It's a windshield wiper for the mind.
I like that, a windshield wiper.
It is a psychological mechanism for cognitive decoupling. When you have a massive, terrifying thought in your head, it feels infinite.
It consumes you.
But when you force yourself to articulate it on a physical piece of paper, it becomes finite. It becomes a problem you can look at objectively. It helps you cultivate silence.
Silence.
Ugh.
We're so terrified of silence today. I see people plugging in their AirPods the literal second they walk out their front door. We cannot stand the quiet.
Because silence forces us to face ourselves. The avant-garde composer John Cage was deeply fascinated by silence. He wrote a piece called 4:53, which consists of exactly 4 minutes and 33 seconds of a musician walking out on stage, sitting at a piano, and playing absolutely nothing.
Wait, really? Nothing at all?
Nothing. The music of the piece is just the ambient noise of the room, the coughing, the shifting in seats, and the profound silence of the performer.
Wow.
Cage understood what the author Herman Melville meant when he said, "All profound things are preceded and attended by silence."
In downtown Helsinki, there is this incredible architectural marvel called the Kamppi Chapel. It is literally known as the Chapel of Silence.
I've heard of that.
It has no echoes, no massive pipe organs, no surfaces. It's just this beautiful curved wooden space in the middle of a screamingly busy urban center where you can walk in, sit down, and experience absolute sacred quiet.
We all need to build a campy chapel in our daily routines. We need to carve out that quiet.
Because without that silence, without that emptiness, we can never engage in deep thought.
And deep thought is required to see what is hidden in life. Appearances are almost always misleading. First impressions, driven by the amygdala, are often entirely wrong.
The Buddhists have a brilliant metaphor. They say the mind is like a jar of muddy water. If you keep shaking it, it stays cloudy. You can't see the bottom until you put it down on the table, leave it in silence, and let the dirt settle.
You have to be patient.
That's how we find actual wisdom. Socrates was considered the wisest man in Athens, not because he had a library of facts in his head, but because he was constantly asking questions.
He probed his own views and the views of others.
He possessed deep intellectual humility. He wasn't relying on his ego to protect him.
Ego is the ultimate enemy of stillness. Ego is terrified by doubt, it's obsessed with posturing, and it absolutely refuses to look inward because it is terrified of what it might find in the silence.
True confidence, on the other hand, is open. It is reflective. It allows for stillness because it removes the internal conflict and insecurity that generates so much noise. Okay, so we've built the first part of the fortress. We filter our inputs with the bouncer. We empty the mind with journaling. We seek silence and ask deep questions. We tame our ego.
We do all that.
And for brief moments, we achieve that incredible mental clarity. We are JFK in the Oval Office, seeing the chessboard.
Got it.
Exactly, but here is where the entire structure can collapse. Because a clear mind is completely useless if your heart is on fire.
Very true.
You can have the strategic, analytical brilliance of a grandmaster, but if you are being consumed by your own desires, your own anger, your own unresolved childhood trauma, that mental stillness will eventually shatter into a million pieces.
Which is why we cannot stop at the mind. The mind is just the roof of the house. The spirit is the foundation.
We have to go deeper.
We have to make the dangerous journey from the head into the heart.
We are entering the second domain, the spirit, taming the inner tiger. And to really illustrate why this is so critical, why mental mastery isn't enough, let's look at two men who achieved the absolute pinnacle of mental stillness in their respective professions, but had vastly different, incredibly dark spiritual realities.
Okay, who are we looking at?
Well, we talked about JFK. During the missile crisis, his mind was a fortress. But the minute he left the Oval Office...
His personal life was sheer chaos.
Yeah.
He was driven by insatiable lust. He took massive, inexplicable risks, conducting reckless affairs even within the walls of the White House.
It's crazy to think about.
He was dealing with a profound spiritual emptiness that he frantically tried to fill with conquests, putting his presidency, his family, and his legacy in constant jeopardy.
So the mental stillness did not translate to spiritual peace?
No, it didn't.
And an even more modern, perhaps more tragic example is Tiger Woods. On the golf course, Tiger was the absolute embodiment of stillness. The focus he had was terrifying. He had the physical and mental discipline to pump the emergency brake on a 129-mile-per-hour golf swing, mere milliseconds before impact if a camera shutter clicked in his backswing.
Just unbelievable control.
He was a Zen master on the green, but off the course.
He was completely destroyed by internal riptides.
Yeah.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, Tiger's story is a tragic, highly public demonstration that external achievements, millions of dollars, global fame, and even unparalleled professional mastery absolutely cannot fill a void in the soul.
He became a complete slave to his urges.
He lived a double life of lies, infidelity, and addiction.
As Thich Nhat Hanh observed, the ocean may look perfectly calm and glassy on the surface, but underneath there can be violent, deadly currents.
Tiger's surface was calm, but his spiritual currents tore his entire life, his marriage, and his body apart.
It's terrifying, really, because we all have those currents. Maybe we aren't Tiger Woods, but we all have desires that pull at us.
Lust for power, for money, for sex, for attention on social media.
And maybe the most toxic, insidious current of all is envy.
Oh, absolutely.
The lust for what someone else has just because they have it.
The Greek philosopher Democritus said over 2,000 years ago that an envious man pains himself as though he were an enemy.
Think about the psychology of that. Envy is a self-inflicted wound.
Leonardo da Vinci, in his incredible notebooks, actually wrote instructions on how to paint the personification of envy.
Really? How do you describe it?
He said she should be drawn as a lean, haggard creature, her heart being actively gnawed on by a swelling serpent, and she should be riding upon the back of death.
Wow.
Because envy never dies, it has no satiation point, it just slowly consumes the host from the inside out.
These desires, these passions, they aren't rational calculations. They are deep emotional reactions. And to master them, to stop the serpent from gnawing at us, we have to look at where they actually come from.
And very often they come from wounds we sustained long before we were adults.
We have to do the incredibly hard, often painful work of healing the inner child.
This is a profound psychological truth that modern therapy is just now catching up to. Many of our most destructive urges, our explosive anger, our desperate need for validation, they are actually sophisticated defense mechanisms created by the child inside us who is hurt or ignored or frightened.
Take the story of Rick Ankiel. He was one of the most naturally gifted pitchers to ever play Major League Baseball.
Incredible talent.
But he grew up in a brutal home environment with a highly abusive father. He took all that trauma, stuffed it deep down into his subconscious, and focused entirely on the physical act of throwing a baseball.
Until his biology couldn't suppress it anymore.
Right in the middle of the 2000 playoffs, on national television, with millions of people watching, the trauma caught up to him.
He got the yips.
He got the yips. He completely, inexplicably lost the physical ability to throw a strike. He threw 5 wild pitches in one single inning. It was absolutely heartbreaking to watch.
The unhealed wounds of his childhood bypassed his conscious, rational mind, hijacked his amygdala, and literally paralyzed his motor cortex.
Thich Nhat Hanh, teaches that we have to actively embrace that inner child. We cannot suppress it, and we cannot let it drive the car.
We have to hold them gently. We have to say to ourselves, I know you are hurt, I know you are scared, but I, the functional adult, am going to take care of you now.
If we don't do the work to soothe those strong, chaotic emotions at their root, they will continually sabotage our stillness.
We have to break the cycle of what Buddhists call samsara, the endless continuation of suffering from generation to generation.
And part of healing that inner child, part of soothing that anxiety, is teaching them and ourselves the concept of enough.
It's so hard for people.
It is. There is this incredible story about the author Joseph Heller, who wrote the classic novel Catch-22. He's at a party hosted by a billionaire hedge fund manager on Shelter Island.
Kurt Vonnegut, another famous author, is there too.
And Vonnegut turns to Heller and points out that their billionaire host makes more money in a single day than Heller has made in the entire decades-long history of Catch-22.
And Heller's response is legendary. He looks at Vonnegut and says, yes, but I have something he will never have, enough.
Enough. Here's where it gets really interesting, and honestly where I struggle the most.
How so?
Because modern culture explicitly tells us that being satisfied means you're a loser who gave up.
Oh, 100%.
Our entire global economy is fundamentally built on making you feel like you do not have enough. You need the new car, the bigger house, the promotion, the optimization protocol, the followers.
And if you stand up and say, I'm good, I have enough, people look at you like you have a terminal illness.
Exactly. I think of it like the mythical Hydra. You achieve one goal, you buy one thing, you cut off that head, and two more desires immediately grow back in its place.
It's endless.
How do you fight the Hydra?
You fight it by recognizing that it's an unwinnable game. Psychologists call it the hedonic treadmill. You run faster and faster, but you stay in the exact same place emotionally. It is entirely antithetical to stillness. Lao Tzu warned us about this in the Tao Te Ching thousands of years ago.
What did you say?
He wrote, the greatest misfortune is to not know contentment. The worst calamity is the desire to acquire.
Wow.
If you are constantly chasing the next thing, you are neurologically incapable of being present to enjoy the thing you just worked so hard to get.
The Stoic Seneca was one of the richest men in Rome, and his writings are filled with desperate warnings about people who drove themselves to absolute ruin chasing money they didn't even need.
It's exactly what happened to John Stuart Mill, the famous philosopher. He was raised as a boy genius, pushed incredibly hard by his father to be an intellectual titan.
And when he was 20 years old, he stopped and asked himself a terrifying question. If I achieve every single objective I've set out to achieve, if I change the world exactly how I want to, will it actually bring me happiness?
And his internal answer was no.
Realizing that the unchecked pursuit of more is spiritual bankruptcy sent him into a massive suicidal depression.
To find peace, we must proactively define what enough looks like for us before the culture defines it for us. We have to cultivate virtue.
Virtue was the highest good for the Stoics. They called it the summum bonum.
It's a strong internal moral compass. It's decency, honesty, patience, forgiveness. When you have a strong sense of principle, when you know exactly what you stand for, you find a stillness that acts as a soul power.
It fortifies you against the anxieties and the petty scorekeeping of the world.
And part of that spiritual fortification, part of letting go of the ego, is realizing that you aren't the center of the universe.
Which leads us to the concept of connection and acknowledging a higher power. Look at Edgar Mitchell. He was an astronaut on the Apollo 14 mission in 1971.
Incredible story.
He is 239,000 miles away from Earth, looking out the window of his capsule at our tiny, fragile blue marble floating in the infinite blackness of space. And he experiences this profound, unexplainable cognitive shift.
He described it later as an instant global consciousness, a sudden, overwhelming understanding that everything is intricately connected.
The Greeks called this sympathia, the mutual interdependence of all things in the universe.
When you see the world from that macro perspective, the petty grievances, the ego trips, the selfishness that drives so much of our internal noise just instantly evaporates. It just doesn't matter.
It's about accepting a higher power. And I want to be clear, this doesn't necessarily mean you have to adopt a specific orthodox religion.
No, not at all.
In Alcoholics Anonymous, which is one of the most successful spiritual frameworks for overcoming addiction in history, the 12 steps ask you to surrender to a higher power as you understand him.
The Stoics believed in the logos, the rational natural order of the universe. The Taoists believe in the way.
The core point is simply acknowledging that you, your ego, and your desires are not the ultimate authority.
This raises an important question. If your entire universe orbits exclusively around your own ego, how can you ever possibly find peace?
It's impossible.
If every inconvenience in traffic is a personal attack, if every professional failure is a referendum on your value as a human being, your soul will be in a state of constant, exhausting war.
Relinquishing that obsessive need for control, accepting that there is a larger ecosystem at play, whether you call it God, nature, science, or the universe, provides a profound physical sense of relief.
It quiets the mind by putting our tiny lives in true perspective.
We are one big collective organism. We are all connected. And when we find that spiritual stillness, when our heart is healed and our mind is clear, we are capable of incredible things. We've built the foundation and we've built the roof.
We have. But having a clear mind and a pure spirit is beautiful in theory. It's great for sitting on a meditation cushion.
Right.
However, we are flesh and blood. We exist in a physical reality with gravity, fatigue, and physical limits. As Seneca warned, do not suppose that the soul is at peace just because the body is physically still.
Stillness must manifest in our physical actions, our daily routines, and how we interact with our physical environment.
Which means we need to bridge the gap between philosophy and reality. We have to look at the body.
The physical manifestation of peace. And the absolute biggest misconception about stillness is that it means being a vegetable.
Oh, yeah. People hear stillness and they picture sitting on a couch, binge-watching Netflix, doing absolutely nothing.
Far from it. Lao Tzu said that movement is the foundation of stillness.
To understand how physical exertion creates inner peace, we should look at Winston Churchill.
This is a man who served in or observed 3 major wars, survived capture in a POW camp, wrote 40 massive books, and led a nation through its darkest, most existential hour.
He was originally physically frail as a child, but he deliberately built himself up.
And the way he achieved psychological stillness is so surprising. You'd think a guy with the weight of the entire free world on his shoulders, dealing with the Blitz, would just want to sleep or lie down in a dark room in his free time.
But Churchill had these incredibly intense physical hobbies. He was an avid painter, which requires immense physical focus.
And even more crazy, he built walls. He was an amateur bricklayer.
Yes.
He would go to his country home at Chartwell and spend hours physically laying bricks to build structures on his property.
He used physical exertion to give his overtaxed mind and spirit a rest. The mechanism here is fascinating. When you engage in a repetitive, absorbing physical task like laying bricks, you are shutting down the default mode network in the brain.
Which is the area responsible for rumination, anxiety, and overthinking.
Exactly. This connects directly to the ancient Greek concept of skull, from which we get the word school or leisure. But to the Greeks, leisure wasn't lounging around being passively entertained.
It was active, intrinsically rewarding work that frees you from the daily grind of survival. It's an activity without an external justification.
You don't do it for money. You do it to restore the soul through the body.
Like William Gladstone, the British Prime Minister who served before Churchill, his hobby was chopping down massive trees.
Just hacking away.
He'd go out in the woods with an axe and just hack away for hours. It exhausts the body,
Right.
but it puts the heart completely at ease.
Exactly. Or consider something as simple as walking. Søren Kierkegaard, the great philosopher, walked the streets of Copenhagen every single afternoon without fail.
He believed that sitting still in a chair was a breeding ground for physical and mental illness, and that walking literally cleansed the soul.
Friedrich Nietzsche said that his best, most profound ideas came to him only on long, vigorous walks.
Nikola Tesla discovered the rotating magnetic field, the basis of the modern electrical grid, while walking in a park in Budapest.
There is a rhythm to it. The Japanese have a formalized practice called Shinrin-yoku, which translates to forest bathing.
It's a form of preventative medicine where you literally just go walk in nature to heal your mental and spiritual issues.
And it's not woo-woo. The physical movement, the repetitive, unforced, bilateral stimulation of walking left, right, somehow unlocks a deeper part of our consciousness. It physically lowers cortisol levels and blood pressure.
And that physical repetition is key to another vital manifestation of bodily stillness, routine.
When our bodies engage in familiar, highly disciplined routines, our minds are freed from the agonizing exhaustion of constant decision-making.
The writer Haruki Murakami is famous for this. He follows a relentlessly strict routine when he's writing a novel. Waking up at 4 a.m., writing for 5 to 6 hours, running a 10K every single day, reading, and going to sleep exactly at 9 p.m.
He calls his routine a form of mesmerism. He hypnotizes himself into a state of deep focus.
Or look at Rafael Nadal on the tennis court. He has this elaborate, almost obsessive physical ritual with his water bottles, placing them in the exact same positions, labels facing the exact same way before every single match.
He is physically ordering his environment to match the internal order he seeks in his head. William James, the pioneering psychologist, talked about handing over the mundane details of our daily life to the effortless custody of automatism.
If you have to burn mental energy every morning, deliberating about what time to wake up, what shirt to wear, what to eat, you completely deplete the higher executive powers of your mind before you've even started your actual work.
Okay, but I have to play devil's advocate here.
Sure.
Isn't a strict, unyielding routine the absolute opposite of freedom? It sounds like a self-imposed prison. People want to be spontaneous. If every minute is scheduled, where is the joy of life?
It's a very common fear, but it's a fundamental misunderstanding of what freedom actually is. Eisenhower defined freedom as the opportunity for self-discipline.
Without routine, you don't have freedom. You suffer the misery of constant low-grade indecision.
You become a slave to your impulses and your shifting moods. A disciplined routine creates a physical safe haven of certainty in a completely unpredictable world.
The discipline buys you the cognitive room to be truly spontaneous where it actually matters, in your creative work, in your deep problem solving, in your presence with your family.
And building that physical routine means you have to get incredibly good at vocalizing one specific word, no.
The discipline of saying no is perhaps the most vital physical and temporal boundary we can possibly draw.
This is so important. When you agree to do something you know you don't want to do, a pointless hour-long meeting, a favor out of pure guilt, attending an event just to appease someone else's fragile ego, you aren't just putting a block on your digital calendar.
You are literally trading pieces of your finite flesh, blood, and time.
You're giving away unrecoverable segments of your life. We have to start viewing our physical energy as a sacred, strictly limited resource.
We have to practice the physical preservation of ourselves, and that principle of preservation extends directly to the physical environments we curate. We must ruthlessly empty our physical space, just as we practiced emptying our minds earlier.
We talked about Epictetus, the great Stoic. He was a former slave who eventually became a wealthy and incredibly influential philosopher, but he famously kept his physical possessions incredibly sparse.
His house was basically empty.
He had a simple iron lamp, and that was about it. Or in modern times, look at John Boyd, the legendary military strategist who completely revolutionized modern aerial warfare.
He deliberately lived in a small, cramped, modest condo and repeatedly refused to take wildly lucrative defense contractor jobs, specifically so that his financial needs remained low, allowing him to speak his mind without fear of being fired.
Because as the Chinese philosopher Zunzi wisely said, the gentleman makes things his servants. The petty man is servant to things.
Let's make this real for the listener. Your possessions, your Amazon Prime impulse buys, your overflowing garage, they are like a reverse mortgage on your soul.
The more you own, the more those things own you.
You have to clean them, insure them, protect them, organize them, and worry about them breaking. It creates a physical and visual clutter that actively destroys cognitive stillness.
If you want profound peace this weekend, don't go to a spa. Go get a massive trash bag and start giving things away.
Creating physical space also allows for true physical solitude. We are deeply terrified of being alone in a room. But Thomas Merton, the famous Trappist monk, found his profoundest spiritual awakenings only when he retreated to a small, completely isolated cabin in the woods.
He learned to let the physical silence soak into his bones. We need to carve out physical rooms of our own, even if just for a few hours a week, to exist without observation or input.
And sometimes, the absolute most profound physical action we can take to achieve stillness is the simplest one, to simply go to sleep.
We live in this highly toxic hustle culture that glorifies burning the midnight oil. You hear the tech bros saying, "I'll sleep when I'm dead," or "rise and grind."
It is literal physiological abuse. It is entirely counterproductive. Sleep is not a weakness. It is a biological meditation.
It is the time when the glymphatic system in your brain actively washes away the toxic amyloid beta proteins that build up during waking hours.
It is when the body recharges the physical batteries that the mind and soul absolutely rely upon.
Clinical studies show that sleep deprivation directly, measurably increases negative repetitive thinking and emotional volatility.
If you abuse your physical body by starving it of rest, your mind will violently abuse you with anxiety.
Protecting your sleep is a sign of ultimate wisdom. It shows you know your physical limits. You are a human being, not a human doing.
And finally, in the physical domain, we must remember that stillness ultimately requires action. It requires physical bravery. We cannot cultivate mental clarity and spiritual purity just to hoard it for ourselves on a mountaintop.
Right. If you sit safely on your meditation cushion in your quiet room while the world outside burns, you haven't achieved stillness. You've achieved apathy.
Doing good in the physical world creates spiritual peace. Aristotle called it eudaimonia, human flourishing through virtuous action.
You cannot sit back while others suffer and expect to feel inner stillness. You have to volunteer, protect, serve, and act bravely.
Because a person who does good regularly will physically feel good. Virtue is not just an abstract philosophical concept. It is what we physically do in the world. And living a life of virtuous action is the only thing that prepares us for the ultimate destination.
Which brings us to the final reality. We have journeyed through the mind, the spirit, and the body. But eventually, all three of those domains must converge at the exact same unavoidable point for every single one of us: death.
Memento mori. Remember that you will die. It is the one undeniable unifying fact of human existence, and it is the subconscious source of so much of our frantic daily anxiety. But the ancients viewed death fundamentally differently than we do.
Look at the Roman Emperor Antoninus Pius. He is on his deathbed. He's dying. He's transferring power to his adopted son, Marcus Aurelius, the man who would write Meditations.
And as Antoninus is slipping away, the captain of the guard comes in and asks for the final watchword of his reign. With his dying breath, Antoninus gives them one word: equanimitas, equanimity, stillness.
And we see the exact same profound grace in the East. When the Buddha was on his deathbed, his followers were weeping, utterly terrified at how they would go on without his guidance.
But he was completely, perfectly at peace. His final instruction to them wasn't a desperate plea to be remembered. It was simply to seek their own liberation with diligence.
Two completely different cultures, separated by centuries in geography, arriving at the exact same profound conclusion. Death is the permanent stillness.
If we spend our entire lives frantically fleeing the thought of death, accumulating junk we can't take with us, indulging chaotic, endless desires, and letting our minds be whipped around by the noise of the crowd, we will arrive at the very end of our lives exhausted, empty, and terrified.
But if we do the hard work, if we put the bouncer at the door of our minds, if we heal our inner child and purify our spirits, if we discipline our bodies and serve others, we completely remove the fear.
We meet our final physical rest, not as an enemy coming to steal our possessions, but as a welcome friend.
It is the ultimate test of everything we've talked about today. The fortress holds. And so, I want to leave you with one final lingering thought to mull over when this deep dive ends.
If the ultimate destination of your physical body is perfect, unbreakable stillness, why are you spending the precious few fleeting moments you have alive fighting so desperately against the quiet?
What is one trivial thing you can say no to today to carve out just 5 minutes of absolute silence? Turn off the phone. Find your campy chapel. Sit in a room alone. And let the muddy waters finally settle.